Are we all set to go? What's happening?
Just give him 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Put your phones off. Okay.
Says the guy whose phone just went off. You're so funny. I love it.
Do as I say, not as I do.
That's right. I love your background, Al, by the way.
You do.
Not Sarah, but not
Andrew,
Oh, it's a wrap.
Andrew, look at the camera. You're looking down. Okay.
Hello, we are the Voices of Experience. Four pals from Toronto, Canada. All of us with quite a few miles traveled already down life's highway. While that may not translate directly into voices of wisdom, we can promise you an entertaining half hour of discussion on a wide range of topics of current interest. So sojourn with us for a while. You'll hear a variety of points of view. You'll be amused, you'll be provoked, you'll be stimulated. And to get us started, I'm going to pass it across to Al Brown.
Welcome everyone to our podcast today. My name is Al Brown and I'm joined here by Sarab Sandhu, Mario Kariakides, and our introducer, Andrew Wood. Today's topic is fake news. Now, you've probably heard this subject. It's been in the news for years now. It's permeated political elections for, I think now, probably as much as a decade, but it really came into its fore in the last 5 years. For those Canadians, you may remember the 2015 federal election, in which there was an enormous amount of fake news. But the real fun time came, excuse me, in the 2016 US presidential elections. The fake news just ran crazy there. Or maybe you remember the story about the child pornography ring that was being run out of the basement of a pizza joint that didn't have a basement. Or maybe about the group of young boys in a city or a small town in Yugoslavia that were constantly putting out these fake stories about all sorts of nasty things that appealed to the reactionary elements that were listening to them on Facebook. It was, to me, just plain hilarious, but it is also very dangerous. Today, we're going to discuss the implications as they go forward, in particular as they relate to the coming US election, where Donald Trump is going up against Joe Biden. I would call on my friends now to give their opinions and their experience with fake news. Mario, would you care to start?
First of all, I hope we're not fake news here, right? Somebody may call us fake
Possibly,
news. I don't
possibly,
know. Possibly,
possibly.
it's like fake news, because that is the whole problem, folks. News has become something very subjective to an individual's point of view. And long gone are the times where news was something people could actually take for granted in what they heard. And things did change in the very early 80s when, for some people, the major fake news channel, which I don't believe is that much, but which is CNN, which kicked off the for-profit endeavors for news.
Right.
And that changed a lot of things, because where before news broadcasts were designed to give the news and be dispassionate because there was no advertising revenue put behind it. Now with advertising revenue came ratings, and ratings were driving everything. So people started to gravitate towards opinion and opinion pieces. So that is where the actual birth of fake news really happened. Of course, Over the past 10, 15 years, it has become part of the lexicon. And now we are pretty much in, and forgive me for using these words, but a pandemic of misinformation and propaganda and opinion and unsubstantiated facts. So fake news is whatever now people want to think is against their particular point of view. They will call it fake news.
Well, that's a very
That's my
good point.
preamble right now, and yeah.
That's a very good point, Mario, because a lot of this fake news is really somebody's opinion about what's going on. And I'd just like to give you a little more context on here. Fake news is not new. In fact, it's been used for hundreds of years, I think, by various sources to forward their ends. I read a while ago about how Randolph Hearst with his newspapers actually started the Spanish-American War, and I think it was 1899. It's when Teddy Roosevelt charged with the Light Brigade, charged up the hill and made a name for himself. There was a lot of jingoism going on, but it was all based on fake information, which was that an American battleship that was on a courtesy visit to Havana blew up in the harbor. Well, it turns out it was probably an accident because explosives were very unstable back then, but they made it seem like the Spanish did it, and that was a good enough reason for the war. So really, it's not something new, but the extent of it, the intensity of it has become something else of late.
Yeah.
Andrew, you have a word.
Well, we're talking about fake news here, gentlemen, but I don't know about this topic. It sounds a little phony to me. Isn't it made up? I suspect it might be. But you know what? The unfortunate thing is that it isn't. Thanks for that little bit of history lesson there, Al. But now the issue is that it's been amplified in previous years, in the last, let's say 15, 20 years. And there's a reason. It's not an accident at all. The Facebook people and the Twitter people have set their algorithms up so that if you're watching a certain thing, you know, or looking at a certain thing, and YouTube does this, then they will feed you more of it. That's some software developer thought, okay, this is a good idea. You like this cat video? Okay, well, here's some more cat videos, which is harmless in the case of cat videos, we assume, but maybe not. But, you know, but when you're talking about, you know, important things, you know, so the direction of society, I mean, climate change is an obvious one, but and you're merely going to be shown things that echo the things that you've been looking at before, then that is right there. That's a recipe for a disaster. And that's what's happening to us. And there you go. It's called, I believe, the law of unintended consequences, isn't it? And
something like that. The other thing is that news, as Mario says, is not for news anymore. It's really for entertainment. So why not go for the extremes? It makes a lot of sense to talk about all these extreme things because they titillate. Why not? It's better than paying money to watch a movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger and the like.
Well, if you look actually, Al, that's a very important thing, because if you look at actually Fox's incorporation papers, they are registered as an entertainment network, Fox News. Okay, they're not a news channel. And that's the way they get around their opinion pieces, and they can say anything they want, and it is protected under that blanket of entertainment. And that is where the problem comes in. People see it in a news way. They believe that they're watching an actual news broadcast, but in fact, they're watching entertainment pieces.
Some time ago, I read that, in particular in the America, most people get their news off those sites now, or they get it off Facebook, they get it off Fox. And if that's your only news source, then you are very limited on your opinions will be formed on that basis. And they're going to be a very limited opinion. If they're feeding back your own fears and phobias to you, all they're going to do is amplify them and make them worse. In other words, you're never going to have a society that is compassionate and such if all you're talking about are people running around in the streets carrying guns, killing others. Sarab, did you have a thought?
Yeah, guys, I was looking at fake news, and there are many types of fake news. And welcome to our listeners. It could be a satire, a parody, no intention to cause harm, but has potential to fool. False connections, when headlines, visuals, or captions don't support the content. Misleading content, misleading use of information to frame an issue or an individual. False context, when genuine context is shared with false contextual information. Imposter content, when genuine sources are impersonated, and manipulated content and fabricated content. Now, actually, there are three types, basic types of fake news: misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, the sharing of genuine information with intent to cause harm. So this has become part of our society to get advantage. There's a lot of malinformation coming in the stock market to buy the stock, buy the stock. It's all false, but they want some intention to happen. So one has to filter through that. And of course, Donald Trump is the one who says there's fake news everywhere because it doesn't suit him what is happening.
Yeah.
So that is what fake news is. And this is, as you say, it's been all the time. Disinformation has been part of history, historical significance, where something was told which didn't really happen. And in the end, somebody got the advantage because of that.
But the problem now, Sarab, is that it has universal reach. And when we talk about the silos, if I'm watching these things and I subscribe to the New York Times and the Washington Post, which obviously have a certain point of view, and it is anti-Trump to say the least, but that's the kind of thing I want to read and I want to look at. But that puts me, of course, in a silo because I have to go out of my way to look at the other side, and I do from time to time. But the temptation, of course, is not to. The temptation is to stay right inside your silo.
Speaking of recent fake news, what about the presidential debate last night? I watched maybe a couple minutes of it, but not very much. And the reviews I've seen on my Facebook account haven't been very good. What do you think of that? Did anybody actually watch the whole thing? Mario?
I did.
Oh,
I
you
didn't
did?
watch it live because I was in the meeting, but after I watched it on playback. I mean, people called it a shit show, and I think that is probably the most accurate description of what it is. You have two people that basically were supposed to talk to the American people about their problems. And Joe Biden tried, but Donald Trump was talking about himself. He was talking about his elections. He was talking about fraud. He was talking about a whole bunch of things that were basically all related around him. And let me just address something that Sarab said, because I think it's very relevant to what we saw last night at during the debate. Everything, and Donald Trump knows this very well because he's a con artist, everything is driven by perception. The stock market, everything. Political elections, what you buy, whether somebody endorses a particular product. If enough people say it's a good product, you're going to believe it's a good product. If a company in the stock market is the same, people are saying the same thing, again, you're going to think that that particular company is good, so you're going to invest your money. If this politician, everybody likes them, they're going to basically gravitate towards that. That is a major problem that he knows how to manipulate. People think he's an idiot, but he is not an idiot. He's a very clever con artist. He's a very, very deeply disturbed individual that was allowed to learn the techniques from a young age on how to manipulate people's perception. And that is what we saw yesterday, him desperately trying to manipulate perception of his base threaten others so that they can be afraid to be involved in the election, because the perception of being in danger while you're going out to vote by having his little quote unquote soldiers sitting right by the polls and threatening others to vote. That is where the problem comes in, and he is creating a perception of fear, and that fear could give him the election as a steal. Yes, yes, Andrew.
Yeah, Mario, you called him a con man, you've called him a fraud artist, and I couldn't agree with you more. But how does such a person get the votes of 40% of the country's voters? I mean, the population. How does that happen? 40%.
Well, Andrew, in the United States, there's really only two political parties. And naturally, the votes are very tightly split. So if you're not a Democrat, you're a Republican. And there's probably about 40% of the people that, regardless of whether Trump is, what they think about Trump, they're going to vote Republican. That's just the way they are. And the same thing in Canada, where we have more parties. So the Conservatives, which are the equivalent of the Republicans, only get 30% of the vote. Conversely, the Liberals only get about 35 or so at the moment, and the other parties get the rest, which means that the vote is a little more divided. But in U.S., because of the way their election system has evolved, with fixed elections every 4 years and such, they've come down to basically a two-party state. And it seems to me that it doesn't matter what Trump says, he's going to get the Republican vote. And I was listening also to a Facebook article about a week ago, and it said, it was from a Republican. It said, you know, they don't care what Trump says. They just don't like liberals, and they're going to vote Republican because they don't like liberals. And liberals down there are Democrats. So that's it. It's an anti-Democrat vote, not a pro-Trump vote, which seems a bit odd.
And I agree with that, Al. But I gotta also basically say that Trump is not a Republican. Trump is an opportunist who hijacked a party. And what happened was in 2016 or the 15-16 elections, people really hadn't really felt him, didn't know his background other than if you followed his life. And the guy hijacked the party for his own ego, his own purposes, the own affirmation of his brand, okay? And he tried basically to improve his brand. He never thought he was going to be a president of the United States. He was more shocked than anybody else that he got it.
Oh, yeah.
But he incited the anger that Al was talking about, the anti-Democrat, said the right things without substantiation, and again, created the perception of making people think that their lives are going to be better with him when he actually has no plan. So is he a con artist? Absolutely. He is the master of con. Yeah, go ahead.
It seemed, well, this is probably why fake news works, because you have somebody, a con artist like that, who's willing to go out to the extremes to get what they want. Now, Trump is just, I think, an extreme example of it, but we have lots of other examples. As I've mentioned, there was a group of teenage boys in Yugoslavia that were trying to make money, sending all sorts of flagrant and crazy posts about people in the United States or instances. They were deliberately going out of their way to attract the audience that really supported Trump. Now, I haven't seen any of their stuff now. My understanding is that Facebook has actually eliminated a lot of that. And part of the reason they did that was because of some of what came out after the last election. Someone got hold of a whole lot of Facebook accounts and started manipulating that information for the benefit of Trump's audience. And at the same time, the Russians were also in the game, trying to influence the election. Now, I haven't seen a lot of that stuff lately, and I hope I don't see it, but it was hilarious when it was there. What I do see now are still some posts that go on about how America is going to descend into civil war if the Democrats win this election. Now, I personally don't think that's going to happen, but I believe that there's some of us that do. In fact, they're very concerned about that. That leads me to the question is how serious, aside from the immediate impacts of voters and immediate emotional impacts, how long lasting will the impacts of fake news actually be? Andrew, you had a comment.
Well, until they change the paradigm, until they change the way the algorithms are set up, it is deeply injurious to the benefit of society. These algorithms, Facebook, Twitter, all of, are set up to generate profit for the companies involved. And of course, they do generate billions upon billions. So until the motive of profit, takes second place to the concerns of building a just society, then that's going to continue. And there you go. And that leads to, of course, potentially to another whole discussion about the rot at the heart of the whole capitalist ideal.
Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, you see, the algorithm and all that are fine. But we are talking about in antiquity when this was happening. Nero in Rome burnt Rome to build a new city. And then he blamed the Christians and put them to the lions. And this is just to get his wish. He got caught in the end, and of course in the end. But before that, in the 13th century, Ramses the Great spread lies and propaganda portraying the Battle of Kadesh as a stunning victory for the Egyptians. He depicted scenes of himself smiling his foes during the battle on the walls of nearly all his temples. The treaty between the Egyptians and the Hittites, however, revealed that the battle was actually a stalemate. So there are many examples of false narratives going out for advantage. This is going to continue. Facebook and algorithm, they're just going along with making it more mechanical, more technological advanced, the information.
The difference, though, is the reach and the pervasiveness.
Yes, I agree to that.
I mean, these representations from thousands of years ago, well, sure, there they were. In other words, humans haven't changed. That's the point you're making. And indeed, they haven't. But the point is the augmentation of the issues through technology and the fact that it's saturating society.
I think what you're saying is that the reach is so immense that they affect what the same information, if we had internet then, what would be the difference versus you just word of mouth and how soon it progressed, the information. But if you have the reach, then there's a potential to do anything.
Yes.
And it is that potential that I think many people are seeing that it has become a threat for the United States. And going to Al Brown's statement of whether or not there is a potential of civil war in the United States, or at the very least bloodshed, it's really real. And I don't discount it because I see the emotional manipulation that's happening. And Trump is all based on emotional manipulation and politics as well. We've talked about this in the previous podcast where you can't win anymore an election with actual issues. You have to win them with emotional manipulation to get people to come to you. And if you are threatened to lose an election, you create doubt, you create anger, you create angst. You basically see what Trump is doing, telling that suburbs are going to disappear if the Democrats win. That on its own basis right now is creating fear. So when that fear and tension happens, there's got to be a release. And believe me, on November 3rd, if it doesn't go his way, he is going to claim that it's been fraud, and he's going to unleash the hounds of hell that are part of his base. And they're going to come out and basically start destroying things. Now that's going to create the other side too to react. Okay, Antifa, okay, which is anti-fascist group, which is again a fringe element of the left. Okay, they're going to go. So we have to be very careful. Is it real? Absolutely, it's real. And by saying that it isn't, we're not really looking at the work that's being done and behind the scenes with this guy. Yes, yes, Sam.
Yeah, I was just saying there was some noise coming there. Somebody knocking on the. I want to cut this out anyway. This portion. Somebody hitting the wall.
I was
I'm
me.
hearing it. Okay.
Oh.
All right. Start again.
No,
Continue.
go ahead. I'll continue.
Tarab,
Al?
you had a point?
Do you have a point?
No, no. You start from now, as if nothing happened. I'm going to cut this out because there was too much of.
I have a question, gentlemen. Is there such a thing as a vaccine against fake news? Now, when I ever see an article on the Facebook and it seems a bit off, I do some fact checking on it. I look into the background. Even when I see some people's posts on it and they make some sort of comment, I will do a fact check. And usually I do so because I like to comment back, dear stupid, your post is garbage because this, I found online and it says you're wrong. And I like doing that because, you know, in a way, I want to be the sort of the avenging angel, shall we say, or the person who stands up to all this crap and says, no, it's not right. But the general public doesn't do that. What do we do?
Yeah.
Andrew.
Well, no, I just wanted to comment on what you just said because, yes, that's a useful exercise, I suppose. You say you enjoy rebutting these people's arguments. But the whole issue, Al, is that the people that you're sending these rebuttals to, they couldn't care less. They certainly don't follow up on your information, and they certainly don't change their mind. So while it's, you know, cathartic for you perhaps and entertaining or whatever, but it surely does not change a single opinion there.
There was actually a discussion that Al and I were involved in one of these Facebook exchanges, where an individual was claiming that masks with the pandemic basically were irrelevant because there was no asymptomatic transmission. And this person was really desperately trying to prove that there is no asymptomatic transmission. She was sending out information towards us and different things like little excerpts from one thing or another thing. And during another discussion where the discussion was leading towards Sweden and perhaps that Sweden didn't have enough, allowed the population to exceed with COVID and not really fight anything and just let the allow a herd mentality to take over. It was something that she counterminded her argument by saying that, guess what? Now it factors in that the asymptomatic transmission does exist. So it is these kind of fake news information that they try to make it fit into their argument, and they lose their credibility through that. Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Well, it's interesting actually that you just used the phrase herd mentality when I believe you meant herd immunity.
Yeah.
That's the exact same thing that our friend there, Mr. Trump, did about a week ago in one of his interviews. And it is so hard to keep your terms straight.
It is.
But,
and, yeah.
So it comes down, gentlemen, to human nature.
Yeah.
We like
I want to
news. Sarab?
Yeah, well, I was saying, whatever said and done, to due credit to Donald Trump, he's a good master communicator with whatever methods he uses, but he changes the perception. The first thing is he won the election, and then Mario, you're American. How much tax did you pay last year? This guy paid 750.
I am a I'm a citizen of the world. Let me just basically say that first of all, okay? Because I have multiple nationalities. But let me just tell you this. For a person that sits there and claims at one point that he made lots of money and paid lots of taxes, millions of taxes, he was saying I've paid yesterday when his taxes were exposed. And then we find out that he paid only $750 because he's depreciating assets and using tax loopholes and doing a lot of different things that basically doesn't contribute to society. It shows you that it's all for himself. And I'm going to conclude my particular involvement in this conversation with this. Sarah basically said that he is a master communicator. He is one of the weakest communicators you can possibly see. He repeats himself 3 and 4 times. I call him Donnie two times, because he always says something twice. So he is really, really poor. He's a master manipulator.
That's what I was going
That's what he is.
Yeah.
Okay, not a communicator.
Yeah.
Maybe
That's
he
what I
could,
mean. That's what I mean.
maybe he could benefit if we were to introduce him to Toastmasters, but I don't think he'd last very long in any club because
No.
of his character.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, we've got to sum up here. So, Andrew, could you give us one final word on this? Mario's given his.
Well, as long as these social media apps, which we're all entranced by, that's and the news, as long as the motivation is making money and extracting, the biggest profit in return, these problems are going to persist, and they're only going to get worse. And while I believe civil war is undoubtedly overstating, I certainly hope it is, but still, though, the bloodshed on the streets is inevitable. And you can write those headlines ahead of time because you're not wasting your time. You're going to be posting them.
So, Rab, do you have any final words?
Yes, I just want to go back to Donald Trump. He redefined what fake news is. Most notably, United States President Donald Trump have broadened the meaning of fake news to include news that was negative to his presidency. That's what he was saying. In any case, this fake news is a very old thing. In India, when they had elections, they will create some problem and the minister will go say, okay, we are going to get rid of this. The votes come to them. And I think the Americans have learned it from the Indians.
Probably.
That's what
Well, I think we should be very careful in the future on what we do because of all those red communist school bus drivers on the roads today that are probably driving our children to perdition and such like this. And who knows what other creepy crawlers are lurking behind trees or under our beds that we must be careful of. And we'll find out about them on Facebook or Twitter or one of those other means soon. So stand by, folks, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.